Hello bookworms, I'm Hannah, and today I'm talking about the best books I've read this year so far. By the end of June, I'd read 98 books, from which I've selected my top 10 reads, and I'm throwing in one honorable mention. I'm going over these books in order from least to top favorite, beginning with How to Read Literature Like a Professor by Thomas C. Foster. This is a nonfiction book that gives an extensive introduction to literary analysis of symbols, themes, and contexts in a way that's comprehensive and accessible. Foster admits that it would be impossible to fit all elements of literary analysis into one book, but he still manages to cover a lot. What I like most about this book are the moments when Foster's personality bleeds through the text. He's funny, charming, and occasionally self-deprecating, but always eloquent. He also gives examples using snippets from other published books, which tantalized me to make some additional book purchases. Next up is The Mothers by Britt Bennet, a literary novel about a young woman named Nadia Turner who suffers unimaginable grief as a teenager. To cope with the loss she suffered, Nadia turns to the pastor's son, but their dalliance has devastating consequences. This book won me over with its beautifully phrased words of wisdom. On top of that, the characters are multifaceted, the dialogue feels natural, and the story, which is recounted by a group of elderly women who run the church prayer circle, has an intimate feel. Moving on, we get to One by Sarah Crossin. This is a YA novel written in free verse about twin sisters Grace and Tippy, whose bodies are conjoined from the waist down. This book is short, so short that I didn't think there would be enough time or substance for me to connect with the characters, but I was wrong. This book emotionally blindsided me. I was not at all prepared for the heartbreak this book would leave in its wake. It starts as a typical story of teen woes, but builds to a more complex account of family drama, then explodes into a riveting story about sisterhood, love, and acceptance. This is a book that rends heartstrings. And speaking of being emotionally blindsided, let's talk about The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. This YA novel follows 16-year-old Hazel Grace Lancaster, who has terminal cancer. She's come to terms with her diagnosis until the handsome Augustus Waters waltzes into her life, after which her life is forever changed and she must navigate the thrills and woes of young love. This book was just featured in my June wrap-up video, so it will come as no surprise to most of you that what I like about this book is how Green manages to infuse something scary and sad with humor. He makes reading about terminal illness and death a comfortable experience, and he had me relaxed and giggling up until the moment he stabbed me in the heart and twisted the knife. Next up is a book by one of my favorite authors, Lips Touched 3 Times by Laini Taylor. This is a collection of 3 stories about supernatural love that all hinge on a kiss unlike any other kiss. There's so much to like about this book. Fanciful creatures, gorgeous illustrations, and stories of passion and gloom. But it's the book's spellbinding prose that won me over. Laini Taylor's linguistic elegance and creativity is unparalleled. Next up is another non-fiction book, Word by Word, The Secret Life of Dictionaries by Corey Stamper. This book reveals the complicated art of defining words and the science of unearthing the etymological origins of their meaning through a funny, first-hand account of the quiet, quirky, and reverent work of a lexicographer. This book won me over because of Stamper's personality. She's an intelligent, sophisticated humorist, and while I imagine reading about how words are defined would interest me on any given day, I don't think it would have been such a delight without Stamper's witty remarks. Moving on to a book that has a lot of people running hot or cold, we get to The Sport of Kings by C.E. Morgan. This is the story of a wealthy white Kentucky family and a young black man coming together because of a shared interest in breeding the next thoroughbred superhorse. It's a hefty, multi-generational saga that explores themes of love, family legacies, racism, and the long-standing ramifications of slavery. This book was my top pick from the 2017 Bailey's Women's Prize longlist. It's an impressive literary feat, but what I enjoyed most about the book was Morgan's approach to telling the story of multiple generations. Instead of bloating the book with too many character stories, she focuses on 3 primary protagonists and then occasionally drops in short stories about the main character's ancestors. It allows for a story that reveals a few hundred years of family history but leaves plenty of room for readers to develop an interest in its deeply flawed primary characters. Next up is another book by Laini Taylor, Strange the Dreamer, a young adult fantasy about an orphan bibliophile named Laszlo Strange who loves to study the language and lore of the lost city of Weep. Laszlo thinks himself too cowardly to journey in search of the lost city, but when a heroic figure known as the Godslayer arrives at his village in search of aid, the opportunity to cross the world is suddenly within his grasp. It's difficult to nail down what I love most about this book. It's just a great blend of everything you could want in an epic fantasy: magic, whimsy, adventure, an unexplored realm, supernatural abilities, love, mythical creatures, captivating characters, and a satisfying end that concludes the story while laying the groundwork for the next book in the series. Second from the top is a literary work of historical fiction, The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead. This is the odyssey of a runaway slave named Cora who leaves the Georgia plantation where she was raised and, on her search for freedom, encounters unprecedented horrors and arrives at devastating realizations. This book won the 2017 National Book Award. It was my top pick from my Black History Month reads, and then it went on to win the 2017 Pulitzer Prize. Not too shabby. Whitehead gives a blunt portrayal of the inhumanity of slavery with vivid and stirring language, but what I appreciated most about this book was his use of dramatic irony. My top pick of the year so far is Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. Here's the deal on this science fiction techno-thriller. I went into it blind. The only things I knew about it is that everyone was raving about it, and there was an absolutely enormous waitlist for it at the library. I spent the second half of 2016 waiting to get my hands on this book and was finally able to check it out in January of this year. During that wait time, I've somehow managed to avoid learning anything about this book, and I'm so glad. It's one of those books that you just need to pick up and start reading. So in a strange act of booktube rebellion, I'm not going to tell you anything about the story. I will, however, tell you what I liked about the book, so allow me to run down the list. Genius plot pacing, a thrilling mystery, tense, speedy writing, complex scientific theories, captivating characters, and an insane, mind-bending, astonishing, thoroughly engrossing story. I cannot recommend this book highly enough. If you're one of those people who still hasn't gotten around to reading it, time's a-wasting. Honorable mention goes to Not Quite Narwhal by Jessie Sima. This bright and charming children's book is the story of Kelp, a unicorn born deep in the ocean who knows he's different from his family of narwhals. One day, Kelp finds the courage to leave the ocean and journey on land to unravel the mystery of who he is. Kelp's story is about fitting in, standing out, and learning to love the traits that make each of us unique and special. If you love unicorns, narwhals, or butterflies, rainbows, and sparkly things, then you need this book in your life. Did any of today's books catch your eye? If so, let me know which ones in the comments below. Thanks, everybody!